One conversation, three perspectives, honest debate on the stories shaping the travel industry.
Each episode tackles a live issue, big trend, or hot debate from across the travel industry.
Every week, we'll be joined by guests for honest conversations, strong opinions, and lively debate.
I'm James.
I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
Welcome to Let's Talk Travel.
Barclays stood up at its travel forum on the 22nd of April and told the room the travel sector remains resilient and was set for continued growth. The trouble is, the data in that very deck had already turned negative, and within weeks, the numbers got worse, not better. With a prolonged conflict in the Middle East, resulting fuel pressures and increasing uncertainty amongst consumers, the numbers, up to the end of May, tell a very different story. So Barclays sees roughly 40% of all UK card transactions across issuing and acquiring. So this is one of the better real-time reads on consumers' behaviour, not a survey. The forum deck that we analysed ran from Q1 2026, which finished in March, and the consumer spend reports that followed, and we're going to talk about today, cover April and May. Travel is classed as a non-essential discretionary spend, which matters because the whole story is about whether it behaves like a luxury people cut or a non-negotiable they protect. We're delighted to be joined by Barclays Director of Hospitality and Leisure, aka Mr. Travel Banking, Simon Atkinson, to pick through the latest figures, to see what's changed and what it means for the industry we love, and to get his own personal views and thoughts on everything. So let's talk travel. Andy, great to see you. Surviving the heat. How are all things with you?
Surviving is definitely the word this week, isn't it? I think whilst it's not spread across the whole country, a lot of people have had to endure some record-breaking temperatures. Obviously, climate change is here and affecting us personally. And
that's a whole other episode. Let's not get into that.
I was going to say we can come on to that another day. But yes, it's been a good week. Unfortunately, I haven't made all the events that I'd like to because of the heat. But really looking forward to getting into this today because I think numbers are definitely my thing, and Simon has got a lot to bring.
I notice you're not in your shed today as well. Is a little bit too warm in the old sauna, is it?
The sauna is turned into a heat box, and there's no way I can operate from there. So I'd say it's not cool, but it's certainly cooler. So it's just been a horrible week, and I'm just glad Friday's here.
Brilliant. And Simon, thank you ever so much for joining us. How's life with you? Surviving the heat yourself?
Yeah, surviving. It's very warm, isn't it? Understatement of the century. I'm regretting life choices today as well. I wish I had just gone to the office for the first time on a Friday for God knows how long. I'm missing that air conditioning already. But unlike Andy, I've stayed clear of my shed at the end of the garden in this sweatbox instead.
Absolutely. Well, brilliant. It's great you can join us. And, we really want to get your views on certainly the figures that Barclays come out with, how they've changed, but also, your own personal views. I know you're someone that loves traveling. You're someone well connected in the industry. So love to hear what you're hearing yourself and what you're seeing. I guess to start, what I'd love from you both is how you're seeing the state of industry at the end of June, how it's changed, and Simon, what's your kind of view on whether it's in a good place, bad place, doing okay? We've got lots of geopolitical change. Where are we?
Yeah, where are we? It's complicated, isn't it? Because if you'd asked me that question 2.5 weeks ago, I might have had a different response. If you'd asked me that question 2 months ago, I'd have had a different response. And you come back to the presentation that was made at our travel forum in April. We were only really 1 month's data into the impacts on the Middle East, and never mind anything else that's kind of happening in people's lives when it comes to inflationary pressures, discretionary spend pressures more generally. It's been really, really tricky start to the year, I think, with no one quite having a crystal ball, no one being in control of their own destinies to an extent. And that comes off the back of how many years since COVID, where we've had that sort of gentle, sometimes steep climb of travel spend across the industry, right? So where are we today? Well, restrictions in the Middle East obviously have been released. That's great. Was this a blip? Has it become a trend? I'm still not quite sure. I think we need to see the June numbers for that. Anecdotally, I think we are probably all seeing reports, comments from the trade. So actually, this last 2 weeks, like the late market is officially here. We are seeing growth in the last couple of weeks compared to this time last year. So I think as of today, things feel like they're moving towards a better place than they were 2.5 weeks ago, 2 months ago. How long will that last? How long could things take to recover? I think it's still a bit of a crystal ball.
Yeah, and obviously in your forum, I think the figures were March was the first decline since 2021, but then the
It
last
was.
2 months, April and May, have continued to decline. You
Yeah.
think that's gonna soften and come the other way?
I think if reports from conversations we've had from the last week or so are to be believed, again, you never say never until you see the actual cold hard numbers, right? But I think, it all depends on what that opening week or two June's performance really did look like before restrictions were lifted. I think it's a possibility. We'll see. We'll see things moving back. Will it get back to a 0% or a positive? I'm not so sure. I think there's still going to be a bit of a headwind there, and then we'll be looking to July. But of course, as further we move into the summer holidays, people, if they haven't booked their holidays, what are they booking? Are they booking staycations instead? Or are they booking something that's cheaper? Again, booking trends have been really, really tricky to kind of work out, haven't they? You then also get mixed in with this can be the time of year that people start to book their October getaways as well. And some of that demand that's come through in the last 2 weeks is even people booking out as far as 2027 already. So we shall see. One stat I did read, I know we love a stat, don't we? But 50% of all bookings in the last week or two have been to travel within the next 9 weeks. I think that's got to be positive.
Yeah, and we've done an episode on that. And that late market. Andy, are you seeing the same in search? How do you view this as well purely from a numbers perspective? I know we've got views that we've shared and digested on here, dissected even. What are you seeing?
I mean, I talked about this in one of my blogs a few months ago. The first quarter in 2026 was the first decline year on year we'd seen in search demand in the travel market. And my view of searches is it's almost a bit of a precursor to what actually happens with bookings, because if people are searching less, then there's probably less people in the market. Less people in the market means less bookings. So I think perhaps some of what I was seeing a few months ago is now coming through in some of Simon's numbers, given that we've had a few months of decline. Obviously, there's been a whole layer on top of that of political instability. But yeah, looking at some of these regions year on year, month on month, we haven't seen big upticks. And this is, I guess, a tough year from a marketing perspective, because if people are searching less people in the market means bids have to go up, the positions have to be higher. And they're either going to be harder to acquire, more expensive to acquire, or looking for a deal, which goes back to the whole sort of, I think, point you touched on there, Simon, of people are holding off because perhaps they do want to get a deal. And James has talked on here before about some of the crazy prices that he's seen from his side. It's going to be a very hard late market because I think there may be less people in it, and also people being driven to OTAs, package people, because that's where they feel they get the best price. So some of the numbers I break down a bit further, perhaps as we go through this chat.
I mean, he is captain deal, so that's probably where he is now, trying to find the latest deal and searching around. Absolutely. And from search, there's this thing called AI that everyone's using. So that's probably where they've gone, mate.
Another layer on top, yeah, which makes things very, very difficult to sort of drill down. And we've also got social media as inspiration. So the whole journey is, again, becoming harder to monitor and measure.
Yeah. So coming back to some of the sort of key points, I don't think it will come as any surprise, but the language that Barclays put out, Simon, changed from geopolitical uncertainty to explicitly saying that the Middle East conflict. That's obviously not the only thing. What else are you seeing, and what's your sentiment and feeling, and either personal and or from the bank's perspective, to will a peace hold, and if a peace does hold, how big an effect will that have, and how far will that kind of reverse out the situation we found ourselves in?
Will the peace hold? I think we would like it to hold.
Put your finger in the air.
Yeah, but like literally put your finger in the air, and you think about the last 3 months and the twists and turns this whole crisis has taken. Who is to be believed on either side of the conflict? The straits open, the straits close, the straits open, the straits close. You just don't really know. I mean, as time goes by, you kind of have that confidence that things are building. But I think everyone has in the back of their mind, could this quickly unwind if someone does something rash? Clearly, I've not mentioned the name there, but I know you all know who I'm talking about there. That confidence is really important, actually, because whilst those restrictions have lifted, one of the things that we've been talking about over the last week or so is actually what will be interesting to see is, are the Middle East destinations open for business? Yes, they're open for business, but are people wanting to travel there, or are they wanting to travel through there to get to longer haul destinations, which has clearly been impacted by this as well? So I think that will be the first sign of recovery. I mean, clearly, if things go backwards, we're then going to have a bigger problem on our hands, because you're then back into, well, restrictions are back in place. How long will they last? How long's a piece of string? It is concerning. It is really concerning. But I think that as time goes by, that confidence will grow, and we just literally will. I think people got to have their fingers crossed that this doesn't reverse.
Yeah, and Andy, I'm not going to pick you up on this specific point, because we've talked extensively in previous podcasts about this. But one of the things that comes across in the Barclays figures is the money is moving in terms of where it's being spent, not disappearing. So the whole sort of thesis that consumers will find a way to holiday is still essentially there. Hotels, resorts and accommodation was up in May, which was strongest growth since May last year. There's also been a lot of redirect to sort of Western Europe, with Spain significantly up. That was 32% year on year. How are you seeing that in terms of search data and, in terms of the resilience of the market, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about the fact that year on year, everything seems to be down in search, and that may be down to AI, maybe down to social media, maybe we're just putting it off. Like, if I can't afford to go on holiday, why am I bothered going to search in? So, and also, I guess also to the point about other people have talked about a lot of places, like just the atoll holders are getting more and more concentrated. So there's a whole mixture of things going on there. But I would have thought, given that the Middle East is such a big thing in the news and there's lots of negative press, and cruise has also come under the scrutiny because of the various viruses, that places that are safe, like the Med, would see a big uptick in searches. And I was expecting and hoping that would be the case. But again, search data seems to suggest otherwise. Spain is actually down 25% this year on year, which I thought would be the one place people would focus their attention and time on. So maybe Spain is perhaps seen as too hot. There's definitely some local tourist pushback in some of the places like Mallorca and Menorca. I would, again, be very keen to see June numbers, because I would hope that there's an uptick there, particularly for places like Spain, but places like Cyprus, still not that particularly favourable in the consumer or the searcher's eyes. Again, maybe just the heat that people have seen, and again, prices, or in fact, Cyprus is near the war zone, when it hasn't necessarily been involved in any of it. So I think the data, again, like Simon, I'm really keen to see what happens in June, because I'm hoping there's a big uptick. I'm also hoping there's a big late market as well.
Simon, this is not what your data's saying. You're saying your data's saying flight bookings to Spain are up 32%. So where are people going to find Spain? And how are you seeing this?
Yeah, well, do you know what the challenge with all this data is, like, what you do with it, and when do you take your cuts, and when do you do your analysis? So I think I sort of mentioned this earlier. Booking patterns are trickier than they've ever been. And people generally, traditionally, have booked different destinations at different times of the year. So I was kind of thinking, I was speaking to my data team yesterday and saying, well, we put these numbers out for 2025 trends, destinations wise, back in April. Can we refresh that? What does that look like now? Are people really not booking Spain, or are they booking Spain, but maybe not, to Andy's point, going sort of via traditional search engines, etc., etc. But actually, if you recut that data now, the theory is that is meaningless when you compare it to 2025 as a whole. So I think for us, that's really, really hard to work out. Anecdotally, I'm actually really surprised to hear that those destinations have got less search volume, because actually when the disruption all started to kick off in March and April, that seemed to be the go-to, the safe haven where people feel safe. You know, people have long travelled to the Med, to Spain, to Canary Islands. You know, how many times have you spoken to someone in the last 3 months and they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to Tenerife or Lanzarote." You know, whole travel conventions have actually been uplifted and moved to the Canary Islands. You know, when they were supposed to be going to the Middle East. So I'm really surprised with that data. I will see if we can get a cut of something for June, just to see if there is any kind of tidbits in there that kind of help us unpick that a little bit more. But yeah, that's a bit of a surprise to me, actually.
Andy, does this mean that people are going to their package tour operators and not direct booking? Because I know you're all about direct booking, but that is, as you're telling me, that is not what the data is now telling us.
Well, I mean, the way people are booking holiday is very segmented, isn't it? There's a whole chunk of people who want a nice package holiday. They want to go to the Med. They want to go somewhere safe. They want to pay a price. They want to get their atoll protection or after protection, whatever it is, and nice and done. There's also a big chunk of the market which I think is luxury and older consumers, and they want something very different to 7 nights in Tenerife. So I'm not trying to like put people into pigeonholes, but there is very different behaviours in the search market and the buyer market. So I think perhaps at the more packagey end, I think there's been perhaps a bit more consolidation in that market. In the luxury side, I think there's more time for people to choose. There's more options, and I think a different behaviour is going to be coming through there. Just interestingly, though, that tends to sort of gravitate somewhat towards cruise search, and cruise searches have been just an onward trend since COVID's happened. Growth, fantastic numbers. Again, this year's a bit of a slowdown in the cruise market, which I guess goes to the point of like people just being a bit more cautious.
Do you think? Because I think the cruise market has been fantastic, hasn't it, since COVID? I mean, it's taken on life of its own.
Which is amazing given all the stories reporting during COVID and cruise. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, right. And just opening it up to demographics that would never have dreamed of, dreamed of going on a cruise. You know, you've now got your Disney cruises, you've got your Virgin Voyages, just really opening it up. Shipyards are full as well. You know, people can't build these things quick enough. And you can imagine how long the lead time is for that. Obviously, there's been issues with a couple of cruise operators this year in terms of virus outbreaks and whatnot. But what do you think is kind of driving the downturn in the cruise market this year, Andy? Because I'm not sure I've got my finger on what that is yet.
I'm hesitant to call it a downturn. Again, I don't have the booking data around cruises per se, and no doubt we'll have Andy Harmer on here at some point to talk about the actual numbers. But yeah, searches have just seemed to sort of plateau, decline a bit. And again, there's more of a bifurcation between river and ocean.
Yeah.
There's again lots of deals going through the market, and people again maybe booking a little bit further out to 28 or even 27. So it's hard to say specifically, but again, I think it will just goes to the bigger point of we're in a bit of an uncertain time, and if I can hold off, perhaps there's just a chunk of people that are now doing that. But again, let's see what June throws up, and we're looking forward to your numbers. No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pressure at all. For me, I think it probably falls nicely into the overriding sort of message that I'm getting from your numbers, which is for the first time, and you've always spoken, the Barclays team have always spoken at the forum about how travel has outperformed other discretionary spends, but for the first time that gap has now closed. So there is I think people don't have the money that they did have. The country seems, everything seems more expensive. I know that there's all the inflationary figures and everything else, but just the sense, you talk to people, things are tough, taxes are high, there's not enough money to spend because everything is more expensive. And I think that's starting to bite now. And I think obviously that's reflected in your numbers as well, which is, that's sad because the drum that kept being beaten, certainly by you guys or reported by you guys, was, you know, travel was the one thing that was resilient to all of that.
And I don't, well, Will, you're saying very negative here, but
I am
people are
negative.
traveling.
I
I
am.
know you love it. But come on, people will be traveling. People will be going on holiday this summer. The numbers will come through. It's just a matter of, as I say, sitting and waiting. But this negativity, we talk ourselves down a little bit of, prices are high, costs are going up on fuel. People who want a deal, there's going to be a squeeze, and I think more importantly, squeeze in profitability this summer rather than people not booking. That's my opinion.
I'm negative. Sorry, Sam. I'm negative. I just want to pick up with Andy on that. But don't you think that post-COVID, there's just been this ever-inflating kind of bubble because people saved money, people realized how precious it was to travel, but we don't talk. COVID used to be in every sentence. You went to every trade show, and COVID was certainly in a presentation. Now it's all AI, but I do think that it's possibly got to a point where there isn't that much more growth to go. And also there are external pressures that are restricting this. So I just don't see it as an ever increasing bubble. I accept that it'll probably sit fairly stable, and I accept that people love and want to travel, and people that have the travel bug. And that's why we talk about this. That's why we've created this podcast. But there does come a time where you just can't, and I can't remember what show it was that we were talking, maybe just the three of us talking. There does come a time where you cannot just keep delivering this endless growth, because it's a saturated market that also has people that have got other cost concerns. Simon, am I right?
Yes and no. God,
just go yes. Right, we'll edit out the no. We'll edit out the no.
Come on.
Do you know what? Right, I'm gonna say why I think yes, and then a bit of no. So the reason I think yes, I've stood up on stage a couple of times and said, do you know what? Right, you've been going like that since COVID, and at some point, to Will's point, things are going to level out. Things are going to become flat or flatter. And for a lot of businesses, that had already happened last year. Not everyone had another record-breaking year. In fact, actually, it was very few businesses had record-breaking years. So I think from that perspective, one of the things that I'd said on stage was actually, do you know what? In any other industry, doing the same as what you did the year before would be seen as success. Especially other discretionary spend markets, let alone anything else sort of from an industrials perspective or whatever. So, I think we were very quick to be negative about non-record breaking years. That doesn't mean that anyone's doing a bad job. That doesn't mean that anyone should be looking at the industry negatively. I just don't think that should be the case. That said, in May, consumer confidence in spending was actually slightly up overall. So you look at the report from May, 65%. Let me just check that number actually. So consumer confidence in their household finances and ability to live within their means improved 1 percentage point each to 65 and 70% respectively. Confidence in non-essential spending grew from 52% up from 49%. So it's contradicting the travel numbers, but I think that is also largely because of the massive uptick in trend since COVID. And that's where we see confusion in the data. Andy?
Taking that on then, so if we're up in confidence in May, then let's hope June's a good month, right? Like if people are feeling confident, sun's out, England doing well in the football, I'm going to book that trip. I think there's going to be a good lakes market, and I'm going to stand on that hill, and Will's going to shoot at me, but I don't care.
Yeah, you sound like James with all your what ifs. So weather's going to be good. There's rain forecast for next week. England going to do well in the football. I mean, we're playing all the what if cards. Fingers crossed, though. Yeah, I mean, with those figures, were they solely, the confidence wasn't solely for travel, though, was it? That was consumer budget. So I think it does come down to whether, they still see travel as such a priority. And maybe it is exactly to the point that we've spoken about before, Andy. The boom in the lates market, everyone is looking for a deal. So yes, they will travel. And I think the interesting thing will potentially come between not actual spend, but actually numbers traveling.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So actually, you might be spending less per head, but traveling more or as often as you were before, because there is this drive to the lates market. So
Is there a theme? Is there a theme? You know, do we think a theme coming through this year, like it had done in previous years when belts were tightened, where people will trade down as well? Say, I remember at an ABTA event earlier this year, they're sort of talking about the history of ABTA. You know, traditionally, summer holidays were actually 3 weeks long. Then it became 14. Then it became 7, 10, whatever mix it is now, because people traded down because holidays got more and more expensive. And you then come to the back of COVID, it was 5 star to 4 star to 3 star. But it's also that increased pressure on those operators to deliver better value for what people are actually paying as well. So I there's always that mix, right? The industry is incredibly resilient by being creative with what it can offer its consumers.
Yeah, and I think trading down in star, trading down in time, trading down also location. I say trading down, but just the growth of other places which are non-standard or high mass market has definitely happened with places like Albania, all of the stans off the back of Race Across the World. They are cheaper, but still similarly historical, beaches, weather, all of those things are now going to mean we just go to different places.
Yeah, or at different times, the rise of sort of the shoulder season on that side of things. I think the danger will come in the next couple of years. I think right now, actually, people are bargaining. People are we've spoken extensively about lates, but people are getting the deals at whatever they can afford, and obviously they will try and push their budget for all that they can. But one of the things we addressed in our lates episode was the need for the industry to actually stabilize, because it's unsustainable for operators and it's unsustainable for the market to have this endless lates and this endless drive for deals. So I think that would be really interesting, sort of looking forward. So who knows? But I want you to put your heads on the block. Crystal ball time, just to wrap it up. How do you see the next couple of years going in terms of, I guess, from what I want to drill down into, where travel will sit in that discretionary spend? What's your gut feeling, both of you, on that? And do you see, let's say peace holds, let's play a James Clark what if, peace holds, do you see the numbers next year being as they were sort of 12 months ago? Simon, you're on the spot first.
If peace holds, I think there's continued room for being optimistic. I do think you were right in what you were saying just now, in that the industry needs to work out how to stabilise. Now, assuming we're on a level playing field, I think that stability can and will come in 2027. What we don't have is a crystal ball for what could be the next geopolitical event. We talk about in Barclays, when we talk with our analysts and our credits, black swan events, is a business sufficiently protected to survive a black swan event? Well, in travel, it seems like they come round like every other year, right? So that in itself is the biggest challenge and the biggest upset to what could happen in the next year or two. Outside of that, I think stability will happen. That said, what failures have been pretty minimal despite everything that's been going on, and the industry has built its own resilience and creativity. But I do think that we should remove expectations for more record-breaking years going forward. I think we just have to be a little bit more sensible and rational about that.
Agreed. Andy?
I think the next couple of years is going to be very hard. I think you've got a lot of inflationary pressures. You've still got a lot of uncertainty around fuel costs. And I was listening to the Delta CEO last week saying he thinks high jet fuel prices are here to stay for the next 12 months. And if that is the case, regardless of what happens politically, what happens to long haul travel, what happens to cost of people booking flights direct versus package, I think, again, there'll be a totality to all of the bookings we'll see. And I don't think it's going to rise much apart from with inflation. But within that, there'll be a whole load of churn of not long haul going short haul, not 7 days going for 14 days as my big holiday, but locally, even staycations in the local UK market. So I think the numbers will stay roughly the same, but the mix underneath could definitely churn a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, guys. That's been really insightful.
Sorry, Will, we didn't come to you. Will, come on, we didn't come to you. What do you think?
I agree. No, I
Oh,
never
come
agree.
on.
No, I think I think from a spend perspective, it will stay relatively the same. But I think to your point, the underlying numbers will vary. I think costs continue to get higher. I can't see that dramatically going, especially on long haul. Fuel, duty, whatever else, it is going to be a challenge to many operators. But I think to Simon's point, that's okay. And I think as an industry, we need to forgive ourselves a little bit more that, we can't have that all the time. We can't have a post-COVID kind of rise. It's okay to keep, pushing along, to keep delivering amazing product and to make a reasonable profit as businesses. I'd like to see some stability and some realism around that. And that means that the late markets goes, which I think it has to. And I know that's dictated by the consumers and everything else, but I think market forces will drive that away. And then we will see that stability and we'll be perhaps even more resilient than we are now. That's my view. That's my tuppence first.
All of that for me as well, though. One last thing just to add on that, and this is a bit of a boring sort of bank thing, rather than kind of exciting consumer demand trends and stuff like that. I think there'll be some consolidation in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I think when you're looking for growth as a business, how do you do that? You do that by gaining market share from others. You gain that by consolidation, mergers and acquisition. We obviously as a bank have these conversations all the time, and this year is one of those years where we're having that. Well, actually, where does our next lot of growth come from? If demand isn't going to, continue to be in the double digits or close to double digits in 27, 28, where else can we get that growth from? So I think we should keep one eye on that.
There we go. That's the final word on that. And look, really appreciate all your insight, Simon, on that. And Andy, as ever, thanks for your comment and all your figures.
Thanks to our sponsor, Travelzoo, the club for travel enthusiasts. Join Travelzoo today for hand-picked deals exclusively for members.
Simon, before you go, every guest that comes on this show has to play our wonderful game, Talking Travel or Talking Twaddle. So I'm going to give you 5 statements and you're going to tell me if they're true, as in travel, or false, as in twaddle. And you told me before the call that you liked a little bit of pressure. You liked that kind of jeopardy. So let me tell you where the jeopardy is in terms of the leaderboard currently. So I think the benchmark or below the benchmark would be my beloved co-hosts, Andy and James, with 2 out of 5.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the lovely Cressida Sargent fell a little below that. Claire Steiner scored a very strong 4. And there is one score above that. But I mean, do you want to talk about that, Andy? Do you want to pick that up, or
you can carry on? No, you're fine.
It says 5 out of 5. Will Plummer, is it? Yeah, Will Plummer. 5 out of 5.
Don't you write the questions, they will?
No, James Clark did that. So it's all on James. So here we go. Travel or twaddle. Simon Atkinson. Travel banking. Here we go. Number 1. And they're all actually payments related. So I've been kind to you.
Yeah, great.
Chargeback rates in the travel industry are typically higher in winter than in summer due to cancelled ski trips.
Oh, I'm going to say twaddle.
You are correct. Well, good start. Number 2, dynamic currency conversion, or DCC, was originally introduced as a consumer protection measure to show travellers the cost in their home currency.
Travel.
Andy, you see, that's how it's done.
Oh,
that's
goodness.
2 from 2.
Do you know what? I forgot to answer then. I was just agreeing with the statement. I was like, yeah, what's the question?
Number 3, the euro was physically circulated as cash until 3 years after it became the official currency for transactions.
Oh, say that again. The euro
was physically circulated as cash. It wasn't, sorry. So that was my fault. The euro wasn't physically circulated as cash until 3 years after it became the official currency for transactions.
Well, I remember it coming in. Obviously, I was very, very young. I don't know. That doesn't feel right. Twaddle.
That is travel, I'm afraid.
Crikey, okay. I mean, I suppose you need time for it to get into the system.
Absolutely. Number 4, 3D secure authentication was originally developed by a coalition of airlines to reduce ticket fraud.
Well, this is where I need a Barclaycard specialist, don't I?
Well,
I'm gonna say that's Twaddle because I think it's bigger than travel.
it was Twaddle. It was actually developed by Visa. So,
Oh,
and the
there we go.
last one, staying on card schemes. American Express was originally founded as a freight forwarding company, not a financial services firm.
Oh, I should know that, shouldn't I? Like, without even thinking. This is a pun. I'm just going to say that's travel. I mean, that's true.
That is true. Simon Atkinson, 4 out of 5, takes you into joint second place with Claire Steiner. What an absolute treat. And that's how it's done, Andy. Andy, thank you to you, but massive thank you to Simon for all he's brought today. That's been a great episode. It's been another episode of Let's Talk Travel. Please do like, subscribe, and share. We've got our LinkedIn handle, which is Let's Talk Travel Podcast. We also can be found on YouTube. And please do find us. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like to see on the show. Reach out if you want to come on the show. And please do continue to listen to us.